challenging state academic standards in order to reinforce and enhance efforts to improve teaching and learning for students. Title I programs are based on effective means of improving student academic achievement and include strategies to support fair parent and family engagement. Funds are allocated to additional staff, we'll talk more about that soon, instructional supplies and equipment, technology, and extended student learning opportunities. And you'll see all of that mentioned rather shortly. So our priorities, when you look at our school-wide Title I budget, when you look at our actual Title I budget, which is online, so it's our continuous school improvement plan. It is uploaded to our school website, and you can see our Title I budget there as well. A lot of that, we do spend money on technology, so we do get Chromebooks through the school district, but what often happens is when we lose some of our stock because students broke it or it was lost or stolen, etc., we supplement that as well. We also get new students enrolling all the time, so we buy additional computers through Title I money to help offset any shortages that we may have. So we'll be purchasing some this year as well. What we'll probably wind up doing is purchasing some laptops and not Chromebooks, because then it's not, it just makes it quicker and more efficient for us to get those out to our kids quicker. We also bought, with Title I funding, some additional chargers, because the chargers get lost a lot or they will short out. So we're able to kind of supplement with those kinds of things. We use Title I money for computer technology software. So there are some programs that teachers utilize in their classrooms that they feel are effective for student remediation and enrichment and support instruction. So they have to provide me a rationale why that is, but it also has to be research-based. I'm not going to purchase anything that is not research-based and is going to move student achievement. So there has to be a rationale with it. We also have purchased Title I, we use Title I money for printers. So when we're, counselors, for instance, are having one-on-one conferences with students and parents, they're able to print out things like test scores and transcripts quickly so they can have that information in parents and students' hands. So we'll purchase things like that, technology for students, even things like poster makers. We have poster makers in the school, so if clubs and groups want to utilize things like that, they can. This year I'm using a lot of money on professional development. So we're at Abbott School. I'll talk more about that later and what that means, but also professional development in terms of English as a second language. We have a rapidly growing English language learner population. I think last year at one point we were probably around 180 some odd students. Now we're in the 220s and climbing. So it's almost every day when I get a new student who enrolls their English language learner. So our demographic is changing. And we need to be able to have the kind of instruction that's going to be able to meet those students and provide them an adequate education. Making sure that language is not a barrier to them being successful. Another thing that we are using that is to really work with our teachers on differentiation. As we did some learning walks today, one of the things that I noticed in the learning walk is that in many of our classrooms, students were doing the same thing. And it shouldn't really be that way because students are at different levels. So while these 5 may be able to go forward, I'm going to spend some extra time with these 10 and make sure that they can get the standard. They might need a little bit more time. And again, that takes, so sometimes that's just harder to do and plan, but providing teachers the opportunities and the expertise in learning how to do that is something we'll be spending some outside funds on. A big expenditure with Title I budget is staffing. So besides spending that money outside, we do have academic coaches in our building who work with our content core areas, ELA, science, and math. I have a position that's posted for a social studies academic coach who will be working with social studies department. But they're there to kind of help guide teachers through coaching cycles. What is something you want to work on to assist and help with student engagement? They'll come and observe, they'll provide feedback, they'll provide resources and things like that. They'll also assist with our professional learning communities, which meet twice a week, making sure that the teachers are unpacking their standards, differentiating instruction, coming up with engaging activities for students to do in class. So I have 4 academic coaches, 3 that I have hired, and 1 that is actively advertised online. So if you know anybody who's interested in being a social studies academic coach, have them apply. We are looking for somebody. I just talked loud on attendance tracking. Since attendance is one of our priority areas, there are some good programs that do really good job of assisting with creating even better reports against the campus, so we can monitor attendance. And one of the big things that you notice that we really need help with, there's a couple of programs that you can even purchase. It's almost like a digital hall pass. So you can track online when students have left class, what time they left, when they came back, and what period. So when the student comes to you for a period, and they say, I need to use the bathroom, the teacher can look on the computer and go, oh, you went 3 times a day already, you don't need to go. So little things like that just help us kind of track and make sure that the students are where they're supposed to be. We're looking at possibly spending some money on that as well as assistance. We do have a couple of options that we're looking at now, and we're bidding those out, but for some social emotional behavior curriculum. So we're identifying students who have had more than 2 disciplinary referrals. They will be monitored through MTSS and our Tier 2 and Tier 3 systems. And we're going to provide them some time that we pull them out of class. We call that our pirate period. It's really extended learning time between first and second period. We're going to unveil pretty soon. And they'll go and work on an actual program to just assist them with some of those soft skills to make better choices. For instance, I was working with a student today who felt that he was being miscast by the teacher. The teacher said he was being disrespectful. He said he wasn't. But when I was trying to communicate with him, he was having trouble communicating his frustration. So instead of being able to articulate that, it became, I'm up here and I was down here, which was able to get him back down. But because he was here, we gotta work on some ways to get them to better communicate, some techniques for that. Because like I was telling the students, once they leave us, they're going to have to be able to do that because sometimes there leads to other consequences. So a curriculum that actually does some of that, and there's some real proven research-based, thank you, Mr. Wright, some research-based curriculum that we want to use to do that task. And finally, we use a lot of Title I money just on supplies. All of this stuff goes back to students. So that's We purchased book bags with supplies this year, paper, poster paper, pencils, etc. We have a lot of supplies that we're able to provide not only our students, but also our teachers to assist with instruction. We do have a 1% set aside for parent and family engagement budget. And again, feedback was collected through your surveys, feedback forms, and input. So basically, we're going to spend that on providing additional parent resources that we have in our Parent Resource Center, which is in our Media Center. I do have a parent liaison, which also is money that comes out of Title I that I'm looking to hire for as well. That is advertised also. But again, those parent resources are will be stocked in the Parent Resource Center. There's also computers and printers there as well for parents to use. So if parents need a place to come and do job applications or fill out things for FAFSA, which is big for our seniors. We actually have the technology in our in our building to do those things. So that we will, based on the input that we received, that 1% will go to those things there. When you look at our data and our comprehensive needs assessment, when we look at where we are as a school or where we were as a school in the last year, when you look at our end of course data, just kind of comparing where we were kind of in 2019 with at the cusp of the pandemic, and then where we are now, you'll see some areas of good news, and then some areas that we can do some improvements on. So our American literature score, we want to be proficient developing. We'll get points for that. When you look at the CCRPI calculation, we get, for every student that scores developing, we get 0.5 points for that student, and that adds up to an overall total score. If they're proficient, we get 1 whole point. If they're distinguished, we get 1.5 points. So the more distinguished, the better. Beginning, we get 0 for. So our goal is to at least have students developing, but we prefer proficient. Proficient just means they met state standards. So when you look at our proficient rate between 2019 and 2022, and that's kind of consistent with the nation, we're seeing a decrease in student literacy. The reading levels have dropped, and again, the pandemic had a lot to do with that. However, there's a lot of vocabulary in science, but you look at our biology scores and you see something different. The bars are going up. So we had a pretty substantial increase in our biology scores this year. We had almost a 6% increase overall in terms of kids developing and above. So our developing students went up, but so did our proficient, which was good. We also noticed we had an increase in math. So we had a decrease in our developing, which also meant that some of them wound up proficient. So we had an increase in our proficient as well. So we're kind of trending in the right direction in biology and in 9th grade math. We did have that same, almost identical looking decrease between U.S. history and American literature. So those are more almost, you could say, literacy, richer content areas. That means we got to do some things in terms of reading and writing in our school to kind of help get those up. So when we look at that data, we came up with our 2 priority areas, which are MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, and attendance. So all students are classified under 3 tiers. 80% of students are tier 1. That means they get regular instruction, research-based instruction. All students will receive that. If they're unsuccessful in tier 1 instruction, we use data then to push them into tier 2 or tier 3. And it needs to be multiple sets of data. It can't be just one piece of data. So our universal screener is our MAP scores, our MAP test. NWEA is the platform they take, what's called the MAP test 3 times a year. So you just finished that in September. So if their MAP scores are in a certain range in reading and math, they're tier 2 or tier 3. However, that can't be the only piece of data we use to identify them as tier 2 or 3, because they could be tier 2 or tier 3, but they never failed ELA or math, and they're passing now, and their attendance is good. They have no behavior issues. So we're not going to probably, that student's doing fine. We want to monitor the student and make sure that they continue to grow, but we're not going to really do the more frequent interventions, because we need some multiple sets of data. The whole point of doing MTSS is making sure that we have the data, that we're identifying the right students to do those interventions with. Another thing we'll notice is that our higher students may not be being reached where they need to be too. So MTSS helps us gauge that as well. So we use those tier 1 research-based strategies daily, making sure that we're using the state and our district curriculum resources, because those resources are research-based. There's a lot of writing, inquiry, collaboration, which increases engagement. There's reading strategies. All those things are built in to those resources. So we want to make sure that their teachers are actually using the resources that are provided by the district and the state, and both have a lot of really good things for students to do. I shared with teachers recently, there's a newer state resource called Inspire, in which it's kind of in its beta stage, but once it adds more resources, I'll share that with the parents, because there's a part on Inspire called Velocity, which allows parents and students to have some additional resources at home to work on some of their curriculum, so it empowers parents too. Once we identify and support students who need Tier 2 and Tier 3, again, we do a progress monitoring, which is between 6 to 8 weeks. So we look at the interventions that we're working with those students, and then we reconvene with the student, the teachers, and the parents to share what that data looks like. Is the student moving back towards Tier 1, or does the student need a different intervention, or potentially needs to be moved for more frequent remediation? And again, all of this happens with parent feedback. To become Tier 2 or Tier 3, first thing we do is get a parent consent, but we also test students for hearing and vision, because sometimes it could be a hearing or a vision problem that is causing the barrier. Priority area 2 is attendance. So some of our strategies is developing an attendance task force, which we call SMART, which is the Stone Mountain Attendance Response Team. I thought of that one myself. That's good, SMART. So we have a SMART team who's monitoring our data monthly. We monitor data daily. One of the easier ways to do it, just making sure that our teachers have all posted their attendance. And then did they post correctly? Improve communication with parents about student attendance. So some of the things that will happen when we do attendance monitoring, we'll notice that a student missed 5 days in a row. And we'll call home, the parent will say, well, we were out of town for a funeral. That's an excused absence. Did you turn in an excuse? No, I didn't. You can turn it in anytime. So if that 5-day absence was in September and you turned the excuse in February, it's still excused. Okay, so it's just better monitoring of those things, but it's also communicating with parents. For instance, I had a student miss almost 8 days in a row, and this was a senior, was going to be potentially dropped for lack of attendance. On track to graduate. The household did not speak English, so I used the ELSA line, which allows me to call an interpreter. We called the parents. We let the parents know, please have your daughter come to school. We don't want to withdraw her, but she's doing a great job. We just want her to come to school so we can talk. I talked to the student. Students had perfect attendance since, but it just took communicating with the parents. So again, one of our strategies is better making sure that we're communicating better with parents and doing more interventions. And again, developing, as a typo, better incentives and strategies for interventions and good attendance. So doing things for our students who do the right thing every day and come to school, providing some incentives. I bought lunch for a couple of kids. I bought some homecoming t-shirts for a couple of juniors, because the junior class was leading that week with attendance. Just small things to show students that we appreciate and care. But again, intervening when those students need that intervention for attendance. And sometimes it's just having a conversation. They don't know that, did you know that the federal government has you classified as chronically absent? What do you mean? Then you explain it to them, they're like, oh, okay. Well, those absences are excused. The federal government doesn't care. If it's excused or unexcused, you were not at school. You're chronically absent. So again, just better communicating the importance of attendance. And again, we're really seeing some early kind of fruit bearing from that. So we're happy about that. Our school-wide Title I program is focusing on, we're spending money on these things. So AVID is Advancement Via Individual Determination. So that's a program for really those students in the middle, to encourage them, to get them the skills necessary to be successful, not only in high school, but moving up into college or career, because we also champion that as well. But it teaches, really focuses on 5 strategies: so writing, inquiry, which is thinking, collaboration, organization, and reading. And again, we work with our teachers in providing them resources and training in each of those 5 what are called Abbott WICOR strategies. So we had a professional development last week on writing, and one of the things we were focused on in our school are learning logs, just a way for students to be able to self-reflect and self-assess what they learned that day, what they still need, and questions that they have. And we provided multiple resources and examples for teachers to use. And that was done by an in-house teacher who had Abbott training, who we delivered to our staff. When we did our district learning walks in school today, I was extremely happy to see in a math class I visited, they were doing a writing journal at the end of class. So again, that's math, but they had to write about what they learned and put that in their own words. So, and there's a lot of data around just that nonfiction writing that students do. We do this school-wide. It's going to move achievement in our school. We're also going to be launching very, very soon this month credit recovery. So for students who have failed classes in the 9-week period, which is about to conclude this week, and who failed courses in the last semester of last year, capturing those students and working with them during our pilot period to allow them to recoup some of those credits. So we actually give them assignments to do that are standards-based, and again, we can do a grade change for them, and it just helps them stay on track for graduation. We pay teachers to do that as well, so that's an after-school thing, that we'll be working with them with that. We're also providing tutorial as well for those who are on track, can come into the building and get extra tutorial help. Title I money pays the teachers, but it also will fund the bus. And this year we're going to do a bus. So we should get more students here because we're going to actually take them home. So we're working on that and getting that information out to you. Not tied to Title I, but I'm trying to also work with a group that works currently with Reading in High School, who does after-school tutoring. They also have an after-school meal program, so that I can get them to stay for tutoring and feed them and get them home. I should have a good number of students in the building. So we're looking forward to launching that very, very soon. Title I pays for summer school. I pay for the additional teachers to work during the summer, and again, provides our students the opportunity to recoup credits that they may have lost to keep them on track for graduation. And again, we've had graduation. We haven't got the numbers yet for this year, but we've had our graduate, since I've been here in 3 years, we've had a graduation increase in our school, which I'm extremely proud of. And also Summer Bridge. And this year, we want to do something a little different. We're thinking about math and literacy kind of boot camps. Instead of just having a kind of a transitional bridge, actually really focusing on math and reading, and bringing teachers in and providing just some added, prep, making it kind of fun though before students come into the 9th grade. We're also thinking of maybe doing, instead of just math and literacy, also doing an advanced placement boot camp. So for those kids who are going to AP classes, giving them a week of really, getting some fun, but also transition and some pre-work before they start their AP courses. So we're trying to revamp Summer Bridge to make it more appealing. This is something that, again, I just talked about, that's Georgia Inspired, which has been shared with our students. And so you can kind of see here, this is in its beta form, but that's Velocity, which is about to come out with more information for parents. But all that is basically for every unit, there's lesson plans and resources for teachers to use. So teachers just need the resources a lot of times. They have the will, they just need to have the resource, particularly our newer teachers, with how they can present the material without just talking for 90 minutes or having them work on a worksheet. Some engaging activities, some great ideas that are just packaged for them. All they have to do is click on it. And many of these also have ELL and students with disability modifications and accommodations built into them. So it's a really great resource that the state is has launched that we're going to be using a lot here at Stone Mountain. Some other things we're using, our teachers were trained over the summer in math 3-read protocol. So again, it's a different way to think about math and to use reading. Also to kind of get some prior knowledge and looking at your word problems in a different way and performance tasks in a different way. So our teachers are doing a real good job of planning and doing that in class. I'm really excited when I go into math classes now. They're not just doing equations, they're doing tasks. So it's making it more real world and relevant. So some good things happening there. School-wide, I talked about learning logs, and again, we'll also be doing some professional development on collaborative group work, just to make sure that we're providing a more engaging, student-centered experience in our classrooms. Science has been focusing on CER, which is claim evidence response. So again, students, when they do their labs, they make a scientific claim. They have to then produce evidence and then respond. What did they learn about that once they did their lab? And again, this has yielded some increases in our biology data. So again, proud of that. School-wide, also utilizing again the DeKalb County School District curriculum, which you can find in Canvas. That's there, and also that Georgia Inspired curriculum. And as we did today, doing learning walks to monitor and provide feedback to our teachers. What are we seeing? Are the things we're saying we're doing, we're actually doing? And if so, where can we provide you resources and support as well? Assessments, we have a lot of assessments that we do in the building. In all classes, every week we do what are called Pirate Probes. It's basically a short quiz. That's all it is. And it allows us to then, when we meet with teachers in their professional learning communities, actually look at the data and provide feedback. These were the standards we did last week. How did our kids do on them? What do we need to reteach? And where can we accelerate? So again, that's something we do every week. We have access testing, which monitors our English acquisition for language learners in speaking, reading, writing, and listening. And again, we should see growth. We don't want students to perpetually be in English language learner classes. We want them to graduate out of that. So it allows us to see who needs continued support and who can graduate from those programs. Again, we do Georgia Milestones, which is currently 20% of the final grade in 9th grade algebra, American literature, biology, and U.S. history. I said currently because there's some discussion with the state in allowing local school districts to decide how much they want to count the end of course test. Right now it's 20%. I personally provided feedback that I would like it to remain at 20% because when you cut it, the students don't take it as seriously. So if they're actually learning and we're monitoring what they're doing in class, they should be fine on those end of course assessments. Our math data, we do that again 3 times a year. We